Good evening and happy birthday. It's so exciting to be here, and I won't do the spoiler stuff, but you'll soon hear about how many members we now have, and this thing that started as a meeting of a few of us. Our first meeting was at Twitter, actually 3 years ago today, right? And Dropbox was there, and Twitter was there, and Twilio was there, and that was about it. And so it's amazing to see our journey. And I want to thank everybody who's responsible for putting this event together tonight. Heidi and Jesse and Vanessa, and who am I missing? Betty and Michelle and Amy, right? So it always takes a village, just as it takes a village in your companies. And so please, please, please thank the people that stepped forward to organize this event. I want to go, yes. Dudley has had pretty good attendance at most of the meetings, and his confidentiality is impeccable. So when I saw that, I thought, wow, the Russians have been hacking my email. That was my real email up there. So we'll talk about who that was. So I want to go through a really quick, hi Potluck, quick D&I journey through all these decades. I think I am the oldest person in the room, and I've certainly been doing this work forever. It's been, oh, my husband just came in. Mitch just said no. Mitch has a few months on me. I co-founded the first group on sexual harassment in the U.S. in 1976, before it was illegal. My first job in tech was 1984, before many of you were born, right? And my job description was to make Lotus, which Mitch started, the most progressive employer in the U.S. So I'm happy to talk about any of those things over my next margarita, having already had one. Okay, so we're going to breeze right on through this, a timeline. We're going to look at it in a few different dimensions here. So in the 1970s, people thought that diversity meant fairness, treat everybody equally. And those big, huge things are actually computers. And people are sitting at what used to be called dumb terminals. In the 1980s, we're going to just kind of breeze through all of this, people started talking about valuing differences. And this is all the language of tech. So when we talk about what is or isn't new, important to know where we've come from. Then we get to the 1990s and we begin talking about inclusion. It also, 91, 92 was the year of the woman. Anita Hill, how many of you were at the Anita Hill Ellen Powell event? Yay, wasn't that amazing, with Michelle Norris in April? And Anita Hill actually testified in October of 1991, and it galvanized more women to run for Congress than ever before. And we should also point out, in the 1980s, there were more women in tech than there are now. And then we hit the 2000s. We hit the dot-com bubble and bust, and tech actively defined itself as post-diversity. And tech said, we are the perfect meritocracy, and the best idea, the next big thing, will always bubble to the top and always get funded, and so we don't need to pay any attention to diversity. And that was the mantra of tech at the beginning of this century. It took a little while, but then since in the 20-teens, we've seen a lot of focus on metrics. And that's Project Include's logo there. We'll talk a little bit more about them. 2008, the San Jose Mercury News sent a Freedom of Information request to several tech companies. 2008, so a FOIA request. 5 companies, Google, Apple, Yahoo, and a couple of others. Oracle? No, Intel had already been releasing theirs. 5 companies sued to hide their data. spent literally millions of dollars a year saying trade secret, saying competitive advantage, saying bullshit, bullshit. You can quote me on that. And we've been known to speak out a little this year in particular. Okay, that was 2008. Fast forward, 2012 is when Ellen Pao, who is now, she's not here, but we can still applaud. Ellen is our Chief of Diversity and Inclusion at the Kapor Center and also a partner at Kapor Capital, and we are thrilled to have her as part of our team here. 2013, another project include members stepped up. Tracy Chow, who was then at Pinterest, and she said, show me the numbers. She's an engineer, graduated top of her class at Stanford in CS. Where are the numbers, and how come all the tech companies are hiding them and are obscuring their numbers so you can't really compare? Some people put various kinds of technical jobs in one category and some put them in another, and so we're all kind of fudging the data, and that doesn't work. So then, 2014, Erica Joy Baker, another one of my Project Include colleagues, was working at Google, and she wrote a piece on what it's like, called The Other Side of Diversity, Medium post about what it's like to be an African-American woman engineer at Google. 2014 is also the year, in May of 2014, that Google stopped suing to hide its data, and 2014 is when Google released its data. Lots of other companies, Twitter, Dropbox, very quickly followed suit, and that's what gave rise to starting diversity advocates, when all those companies said, wait a second, we really should pay attention to this. 2015, Leslie Miley wrote his post on Medium about the racist undertones of things like, well, diversity is great, but we can't lower our bar, said by the VP of engineering at Twitter, which was sort of the final straw and why Leslie Miley walked out. And that gavel is when Ellen's 2012 suit actually came to court. Last timeline here, also in 2008, the same as the FOIA request, Latinos in Tech and Innovation and Social Media got started and very quickly grew to about 160,000 members and actually has more than that number now. Ana Roca Castro is the founder of Latism. She's also a CEO and a founder of a company in the Kapor Capital portfolio called Genius Plaza, which she started a number of years later. 2011, Soledad O'Brien did CNN's Black in America 4, Silicon Valley, the Promised Land. All of the demo day and much of that was filmed in our old office on Howard Street in San Francisco. But it was the first beginning to look at race in Silicon Valley. 2012, that is Trayvon Martin and the beginning of the Black Lives Matter movement. 2014 is when Jesse Jackson decided it was time to start talking to Silicon Valley. 2015, we saw U.S. Supreme Court hand down their marriage equality decision, and that's also when Intel stepped up with a $300 million commitment to diversity. Here we are today with Susan Fowler's blog, with 3 Asian American women coming forward in the information against Justin Kalbeck at Binary Capital, and 2 women, 1 African American, 1 Asian American woman, coming forward against Dave McClure and in the New York Times, and Chris Sacca. We, Kapor Center, put out a tech leaver study actually in May about why people leave tech. And those are you can just Google tech leavers study and you'll find the 4 major findings of that study. It's available, the whole thing, for free, an infographic, executive summary. But we were looking at the intersectionality of who leaves tech and why. More than 2,000 respondents in that survey, very rigorously defined, mostly engineers, lots of engineers of color in there. So one of the things we looked at is what happens, what's the role of having D&I initiatives in who leaves and why? Do they make a difference? So 57% of those who left voluntarily their tech companies said they would have stayed if their employer had created a more fair and inclusive culture. All of you know the cost of turnover in your companies, and it's staggering, both in dollars and in reputation, especially when it's underrepresented engineers of color. And so we looked at what is the role of D&I initiatives in increasing fairness and decreasing turnover. So, oops, that's not supposed to be like that. Well, there's the punchline. Oh, he went through, these were supposed to go. So that first one, so we tested 5 things. I was going to put these each up and ask you to vote, but here's your votes. I guess Russia did this too, right? So the first is having someone who's a D&I director. All by itself, it makes 0 difference in incidents of unfairness or in turnover because of diversity-related issues. Setting explicit diversity goals actually all by itself does make a statistically significant difference. That's really important because that's one of the things that people most resist. Because people say that's not fair, that's quotas, you've heard it all. But we really need to figure out how to help people understand why setting explicit goals is important and why it works. The next one is also something that all by itself works and that people immediately have an allergic reaction to, which is to give a 2x or a 3x employee referral bonus to diverse candidates, right? We do it for full stack Ruby engineers, right? No problem, 2x employee referral bonus. Diverse candidate, oh no, you can't do that, that's not fair. But it actually works. The next one, unconscious bias training. All by itself, not only does it not make a difference, most of the literature says it has a negative impact as a standalone initiative. It makes the diversity climate worse. And the last one is establishing ERGs. All by itself, 0 difference. The positive news is if you have all 5 together as a well-integrated, well-explained D&I strategy, it actually makes a statistically significant difference in 2 important ways. Decreasing the kinds of unfairness experienced by each and every group. By race, by LGBTQ status, by gender, by intersectionality. Each and every one of those is significantly reduced if you have all 5 as a comprehensive strategy, and reduces turnover. One problem I think we've got with D&I these days is we have what I think of as a false debate going on. It's this either-or view. People say, oh, it's a pipeline problem. No, there's no pipeline problem. Look at everybody who graduated from here or there with 18,000 people of color with CS degrees. There's no pipeline problem. There's a tech culture problem. Wrong, unhelpful, false dichotomy. It's both. And the biases and barriers that underlie both are what you need to fix. There is a pipeline problem. You can't possibly look at who took the AP computer science exam by race and by gender and by intersectionality and not conclude that there's a pipeline problem. And I should say that there are, I want to say the number is, in the entire state of California, there is a paltry, I think it's 144, correct me if I'm wrong, African Americans who took the APCS exam, right? More than 20% of those are in our SMASH program. Well, we only have 4 campuses. We have a tiny, I mean, the one thing is SMASH is off the charts effective, but we have a tiny, tiny rounding error of students in California. And if our program can make that big of a difference, there's a bigger problem. So we think we need to focus on the biases and barriers that are at the intersection of what is both the pipeline problem, that tells kids of color you can't do this, that tells girls of all backgrounds you can't do this, and how people are treated every day in many tech companies. But I'm still hopeful. One is I'm going to retire. But besides that, I'm hopeful for some other reasons. Demographics. We've finished 3 academic years of where underrepresented students of color have been the majority of kids in K-12 throughout the US. We're not talking about a border town. We're not talking about Texas or California. We're talking about the entire US K-12 population. And if that's been true for the past 3 years, then there have been that many kids that are already in college, right? And that gap is only going to widen. Those are your employees. Those are your customers. The second is the hidden bias framework. If it's done right, if it says we have a human problem, which is that human brains are wired to be biased, and unless we take concerted action, we're not going to fix it. All of us. It's not like some people are bigots and some people are enlightened and we have to bludgeon those who aren't enlightened. It is, we are all biased and we all have to be fixing this. We have a lot of people ops tech companies. I fondly call them pot companies, but they're a different kind of pot company, that are leveraging technology to mitigate bias at scale. Junco is in the room. Is anybody else in the room? Junco does a really cool thing. It integrates with your Salesforce and your email and all that, and it pops up and it says, hey, sales manager, I think you gave the last 7 accounts to white guys. How come? There's some more talent on your team. And people write the bot back. Say, oh, I didn't mean to. I didn't notice. Thanks for reminding me. So they've actually published a blog post of conversations with the bot.
A recording of that tone you just used.
I need another margarita for that. Okay. Number 4 of why I'm hopeful, diversity advocates. And I won't steal Amy's thunder, but she's going to tell you about how many diversity advocates there are now, right? And SMASH, our Summer Math and Science Honors Academy. I was at SMASH Stanford yesterday. I was at SMASH UCLA a couple weeks ago. I was at SMASH Berkeley a couple weeks before that. Those kids are un-frickin' believable. And so we've got 5 programs now. We're going to Detroit and Philadelphia next summer. So we will have wonderful kids for all of you to hire. So our kids come from 40, 50, 60% dropout, high school dropout rates. We've got 14 years, 14 years, not days or weeks. 14 years we've been running this program, 100% graduation rate from high school, 100% acceptance to college rate, 50% of those kids are at top 1% colleges. First in family to go to college. First, they are free and reduced lunch kids. Kids don't go. The 2% who actually don't take that 4-year college straight out of high school, they are staying home to support their families and eventually come back. We've got a rate that's more than twice that of white and Asian students who are persisting as STEM majors. More than 500 alumni in college right now. And turn it over to Amy.